There's something almost ironic about the idea of maturity in a football match that saw a red card, a video assistant referee reversal, and 3 goals inside 15 minutes. And yet, somehow, Manchester United walked out of San Mames with a result that felt controlled, poised, mature. Yes, those words in United in Europe, shocking, I know. But this wasn't a chaotic shootout. This wasn't a smash and grab. This was cold, calculated, clinical. This was Manchester United at their most emotionally detached, walking into someone else's house, rearranging the furniture, and leaving with the family silver. It all turned on its head around the half-hour mark. Up until then, Bilbao had looked lively, twitchy, in the best way. Inaki Williams flashing about like an emergency siren, Berenguer buzzing with intent. The crowd could smell something in the air. United? Passive. Measuring. Waiting. And then the moment came. Maguire, of all people, breaking the lines, curling in a cross, Ugarte flicking it. And there was Casemiro, unbothered by the crowd or the pressure or the physics of it all. 1-0. The next few minutes weren't just pivotal, they were hysterical. It was like watching the moment the bottle explodes from being shaken too long. A penalty shout, a review. The referee jogging to the screen, that little pantomime we've all come to know and dread, like a bad soap opera character returning from the dead. You knew what was coming. Everyone knew what was coming. Penalty, red card. And I'll say it, absolutely correct. Because yes, it was a penalty. And if it was a penalty, then Danny Vivian has to go. Denial of a clear goal-scoring opportunity. The laws of the game are weirdly poetic like that. Brutal, but fair, like a Shakespearean execution. Vivian was gone. The stadium was incensed, and Bruno Fernandes was stepping up with all the composure of a man playing chess in a burning building. 2-0. And before anyone could even begin to process the second goal, bam. Third, another twist of the knife. Ugarte with the guile, Fernandes with the finish. All of a sudden, it was like Athletic had been turned into statues. San Mames, normally one of the loudest, most emotionally volatile stadiums in Europe, fell into stunned silence. It was like watching a thunderstorm suddenly stop mid-strike. That first half wasn't just about goals or decisions, it was about narrative collapse. Athletic came into this wanting to play the home final on their own turf. There was myth, there was destiny, there was pride. And then United walked in, calmly carved them open, and walked out with the soul of the tie tucked under their arm. And let's be honest, United haven't exactly been glowing beacons of stability this season. In the Premier League, they've been more confused than threatening. But something about Europe, something about the bright lights and the knockout rounds, it turns them into this strange, disciplined, focused version of themselves. Like a drunk friend who sobers up only when the karaoke starts. And what impressed me wasn't the goals. It wasn't even the ruthlessness. It was the restraint. After going 3-0 up, United didn't get giddy. They didn't chase glory. They didn't overplay. They just managed. They preserved. They looked like a team that knew the job wasn't done, that another 90 minutes lay ahead. It's the kind of temperament that wins tournaments, not just ties. Sure, there will be arguments. People will nitpick the penalty. Others will call the red card harsh. But the truth is, Athletic lost control of their emotions, of their positioning, of the match. And United took it. Took it, folded it into a neat little parcel, and stashed it for next week. This wasn't some glorious resurrection. This wasn't a miracle. This was just a very good team doing exactly what they were supposed to do at exactly the right time. Which, if you're United, is maybe the scariest thing of all. The split between first half and second half in this one was like flipping from a thriller to a nature documentary. One moment you're on the edge of your seat, clinging to every twist. The next, you're watching gazelles graze, while David Attenborough whispers soothing truths about the food chain. But it worked. The chaos had purpose, and the calm had weight. That's what made it such a powerful performance from Manchester United. They understood the tone of each half and played both like seasoned actors. Let's go back to the opening half hour, where United looked more volunteer tribute than European semi-finalist. Athletic Bilbao were up for it. Truly, viscerally up for it. They pressed like caffeine-addled philosophers, all energy and intensity with just enough thought behind the chaos to make it dangerous. Inaki Williams looked like he'd strapped a rocket to his back. Berenguer was sniffing around the box like a bloodhound in a butcher's shop. And you know what? They should have scored. They had the openings. They just didn't take them. Onana had one proper save to make, a few crosses to flap at, but mostly it was the tension that told you Bilbao were close. But then came the 30th minute, and the script was torn up. Casemiro. That name again. It's almost rude at this point. If the man's not breaking up play with the grace of a ballet bouncer, he's ghosting into the 6-yard box to nod home like it's a casual hobby. And it was a lovely goal, too. Not flashy, not loud, just effective. Maguire with a genuine moment of inspiration, Ugarte's delicate flick, and Casemiro doing Casemiro things. Then the moment. The moment everything cracked open. That penalty sequence was VAR in all its absurd operatic glory. The delayed tension, the frozen stadium, the slow-motion destruction of athletic structure. I can already hear the angry pub debates. Soft contact. He went down too easy. But let's be honest, Vivian knew what he was doing. He tugged the shirt. And when you tug a shirt in the box in 2025, you're basically giving the referee a choice between red or very red. He chose red. The stadium lost its mind. The players lost their shape. United, they just smiled. Bruno Fernandes converted with a sense of grim inevitability, like he was collecting a library fine. Then, just minutes later, the third goal. Ugarte. Again. That sly flick, that feathered pass, the kind of touch that makes you pause and ask if you really saw it. Bruno was clean through and never looked like missing. 3-0, halftime, silence. So how do you come back from that? The second half began, but the match didn't. Not in any meaningful way. United played like librarians. Quiet, efficient. Nobody made noise unless it was necessary. They kept the ball, passed with caution, and reminded the world what a side in control looks like. Every touch was a choice. Every pass a message. We've got this. Athletic, to their credit, didn't fold entirely. They tried. Inaki still ran. Jallo tried to spark something, but it was all in vain. The game had already slipped through their fingers, like trying to hold smoke. The few chances they mustered were speculative, and Onana was barely troubled after the break. The second half was a masterclass in emotional pacing from United. Don't chase, don't provoke, just hold. And they held. Let's talk about Ugarte for a moment. You want to know how mature this win was? Just look at him. The kid orchestrated midfield traffic like a grizzled veteran. 2 assists. Count them. One was a knock-on header, the other a backflick of the gods. And then he left the field with barely a celebration, like he had errands to run after the match. Even when Casemiro nearly made it 4, rattling the post from a corner, it didn't feel like they were desperate to score more. They were making a point. They were saying, we can, we just don't need to. That's grown-up football. That's we've been here before football. There's this idea in football that a 3-0 win away from home is an anomaly, some kind of emotional freak result. But this felt inevitable. The game opened, United walked in, and then shut the door behind them. Bilbao were brave, proud, intense, but naive. And the difference between bravery and recklessness is razor thin when you're playing a team that knows exactly when to strike. The final whistle blew with a sense of quiet resignation. No more drama, no late flurry. Just the sense that one team had managed a game and the other had been swallowed whole by it. You can't say it wasn't entertaining. You just have to ask, when was the last time United looked that composed? This wasn't just a tale of Manchester United outplaying Athletic Bilbao. It was something more elemental. This was one of those matches where the teams told their own stories without needing a single line of dialogue. One rose to the occasion, stepped into the moment like it had been waiting its whole life for this exact stage. The other, well, it blinked. It panicked. It lost the plot in front of its own crowd. And the worst part is, they'll know it. Let's start with Athletic. Because if you were hoping for a home final at San Mames, this felt like an early funeral. The banners were up, the stands were packed with fire and faith. There was that electricity you only get when something special is about to happen, or supposed to. They wanted to believe this was their time, their tie, their destiny. But this is football, not fantasy. The gods don't always listen. Sometimes they send Bruno Fernandes instead. And for about 30 minutes, Athletic did everything right, except score. They were intense, direct, alive. Inaki Williams was electric down the right, turning Mazraoui around like a glitching character in a video game. Berenguer carved out 2 proper chances and nearly punished United early. The midfield had bite. The crowd had voice. It all felt close. But that's the thing about being close. It's not the same as being ready. They came in with the best defense in La Liga, they said. 6 wins at home in the competition, they said. Unbeaten in Europe at San Mames, they said. But all of that can burn in about 5 minutes of bad football. Or, in this case, 5 minutes of Manchester United deciding they'd had enough. When the first goal went in, Athletic looked stunned, like someone had pulled the plug and nobody had the manual to reset the system. Then came the penalty, the red card, the third goal, and it was like watching someone get swept out to sea in slow motion. Every plan they had was gone. Valverde had to improvise. Out went DeMarcos, a club icon trying to end his career on a high. Off came Berenguer, who had been one of their most dangerous players. It felt desperate. And desperation in a European semifinal is lethal. What Athletic lacked was resilience. Not the kind that runs harder or tackles more. Real resilience. The kind that recalibrates. The kind that holds shape when the lights get too bright. Once they lost Vivian, they lost the plot. They looked disjointed, disillusioned, and disconnected. It didn't matter that they still had Inaki and Nico on the pitch. It didn't matter that their midfield was full of fighters. Emotion swallowed structure, and structure wins matches. Now, let's talk about Manchester United. Yes, them. The Premier League's most confusing art project. The team that's been 15 different things this season, most of them bad. But on nights like this, they become something else entirely. In Europe, they don't look weighed down by expectation. They look like they enjoy the stage, and this was a performance. They didn't start well. Not even close. For a good stretch of the first half, they looked like a bunch of strangers trying to remember if they were supposed to be playing football or attending a team-building seminar. But then the tempo changed. And when United settle into rhythm, when they smell blood, they have this way of dismantling teams without ever looking breathless. Casemiro was the trigger. Again. He makes things simple. Just simple enough that everyone else can start thinking a little more clearly. Then there's Ugarte, who honestly looked like he was playing a different sport entirely. His vision? Ridiculous. His composure? Bizarre for someone that young. And Bruno, we'll get to him properly in the next part, but suffice to say, he was the spine, the edge, the engine. And even the things that usually go wrong for United didn't. Maguire didn't panic. Lindelof didn't forget how to defend. Onana wasn't auditioning for a late-night blooper reel. It was all, dare I say, competent. No, more than that. It was effective, cold-blooded, a European performance in the truest sense. United didn't beat Athletic with flair. They beat them with clarity, with execution. They didn't take silly risks in the second half. They didn't taunt or overextend. They played it safe, not because they were scared, but because they didn't need to do anything else. The job was done. And so now, as we look toward the second leg, we see two teams in very different emotional places. Athletic have to rebuild something from rubble. They have to find belief again, somehow, and turn 3-0 into something less fatal. Good luck with that at Old Trafford. United, they're staring down the barrel of a European final, again. And what's terrifying is, they look ready. You can tell a lot about a match by how the individual performances sit with you the next day. Not the stats. Those will tell you expected goals and passing accuracy and number of successful dribbles as if football was an engineering exam. No, I'm talking about the feeling. The echo of the game. The players who made you lean forward in your chair or throw your hands in the air or just mutter bloody hell under your breath. That's what sticks. That's what this part is about. Let's start at the top of the player pyramid with Bruno Fernandes. Captain, creator, clinical finisher, and possibly part-time clairvoyant. The man had one of those nights where you swear he could see 3 seconds into the future. That first penalty? The run-up was a joke. He sent the goalkeeper the wrong way with the kind of chill usually reserved for meditation instructors. And the second goal? He timed his run like he had a cheat code. Ugarte flicks it on, and Bruno's already halfway into the celebration. But it wasn't just the goals. Bruno set the tempo. You could see him barking orders, shaping attacks, dropping into midfield to build play when United needed a foothold. He was part fire, part metronome. It's almost annoying how composed he was. When he plays like this, he makes everyone around him calmer, more certain. And that more than his brace, is what made this a captain's performance. Speaking of certainty, let's talk about Manuel Ugarte. If you didn't already have his name underlined in your notebook before this match, you do now. This was a remember me kind of performance. 2 assists, yes. But more than that, it was the tone, the decisions, the weight of his passes. He looked like he was playing the match on mute, while everyone else was screaming. That little flick to release Bruno for the third? Pure audacity. The sort of thing that tells you a player has total clarity of mind. And Ugarte never looked rushed, never looked worried, even when the match was a blur in that first half. He's not flashy, but he's frighteningly effective. A silent conductor in the chaos. Now, Casemiro. Ah yes, Casemiro, who probably drinks jet fuel and reads tactical manuals as bedtime stories. He scored the opener, his typical brand of violence disguised as grace, and then proceeded to mop up anything remotely resembling danger. At one point, Nico Williams tried to break through the middle, and Casemiro stepped in like he was late to a meeting. Businesslike, cold, efficient. He may not cover the same ground he used to, but he still sees the game 2 passes ahead of everyone else. And he nearly added a second goal too. His header off the post was another reminder that he's a weapon in both boxes. Still, Harry Maguire deserves a mention. Yes, I said it, we're doing this. Because when United were under pressure in the opening exchanges, Maguire did the one thing everyone mocks him for not doing. He stayed calm. He found the cross for the first goal, and let's not act like that was accidental. It was a purposeful run, a measured delivery. After that, he defended, like really defended, cleared his lines, stayed on his feet, avoided calamity. That might sound basic, but in his case, it felt like a personal renaissance. No memes tonight, just minutes well played. Andre Onana wasn't busy, but when called upon, he made the saves. That early strike from Berenguer? He was across and down before the ball even curled. There's something reassuring about a keeper who doesn't overreact. And for all the chaos he's invited into United's season with some questionable decision-making, this was a clean sheet rooted in discipline. Not flash, just focus. And then there's Garnacho. Young, raw, still a bit reckless, but good grief is he alive. Every time he got the ball, the crowd collectively inhaled. He nearly got on the score sheet, stung the palms of Ugarte a couple times, and was a constant nuisance. The touch isn't always perfect, but the energy? Relentless. You can teach a winger when to pass. You can't teach him to run like his soul's on fire. Now the other side of the coin. Inaki Williams tried, desperately. At times, you could see the frustration leaking out of him, hands on hips, eyes rolling, pleading with teammates to keep up. He was a threat in the first half, caused real problems down the right, but once Athletic went down to 10 men, he was isolated. Cut off. He ran and ran and ran, but the game had moved past him. It's hard to fault him, but this wasn't his night. Nico Williams? A ghost. Not by choice, but by system. He barely got a touch in the second half. Every time he did, it was 2 red shirts in his face. He looked like a winger with no one to play off. The spark was there, but the fire never caught. And then there's Danny Vivian. Oh, Danny. He'll replay that shirt tug 100 times. He'll say he had to do it. He'll say he thought he could get away with it. But when the penalty and red card came, it was like pulling the plug on Bilbao's season. He wasn't terrible before that. He actually looked quite solid. But one bad decision under pressure, and he's the headline. Football can be that cruel. Athletic's Ugarte was one of the few to walk off with dignity intact. He kept it from being 4 or 5. Point-blank saves, smart reactions, strong wrists. He did his job. He did it better than most. The problem was, the game was already gone. In the end, this was a night that belonged to United's individuals, not because they each had world-class moments, but because they came together to play like a team with purpose. The story of this match was written in their decisions, their touches, their restraint. And while Bilbao fought, it was like watching a boxer swinging at shadows by the end. So here we are, 3-0, 1 foot in the final, one team dreaming, the other drowning. The players made it feel inevitable. That's the mark of a real European night. This has been Across the Pitch, over and out.